Hello and welcome to this recording from Support Cambridgeshire, a partnership of Cambridge CBS and Hunts Forum. This session is an introduction to the duties of charity trustees, and it's one of a number of recordings we've produced around setting up and running a small charity or association. We've provided links to the resources I refer to, which you can find alongside this recording. The Charity Commission is the regulator for most charities, and they produce core guidance for trustees called the Essential Trustee. This session uses this guidance and focuses on the 6 main duties. Let's go back to basics for a moment by looking at what defines a trustee and a charity. Trustees aren't always called trustees. They might be called board members, management committee members, governors, directors, or something else. But what they all have in common is that they share the ultimate responsibility for governing a charity and directing how it's managed and run. Charities are independent organisations which are established for purposes that add value to the community as a whole or a sufficient section of the community, and which are not permitted by their constitution to make a profit for private distribution. To be charitable, you must be set up exclusively to achieve charitable purposes as defined by charity law. Charities registered with the Charity Commission will have their charitable purposes described as objects in their constitution. More on this in a moment. To be charitable, you must also be set up for public benefit, which means the benefit must outweigh any potential harm and will apply to a sufficient section of the public. If your group's aims meet both these criteria, you are a charity, but if your income is below £5,000 per annum, depending on your structure, you may not be registered with the Charity Commission. This chart summarises the main legal structures for charities, and there are links for more details on these structures. But what I want to point out to you is that the rules a charity has to abide by and the regulator they report to will differ depending on how they're structured. So you can see that charitable companies, which are also known as companies limited by guarantee, have 2 regulators, and a community benefit society doesn't answer to the Charity Commission but to the Financial Conduct Authority. The other key element a charity structure dictates is the level of liability the trustee has to third parties. So incorporated groups have a legal standing similar to a person, which means the group can make legal commitments such as entering into contracts, rather than the trustees as individuals having to make this commitment. This means that, like a limited company, trustee liability is usually limited to £1. Just as in the wider corporate world, there are exceptional circumstances when trustees in incorporated charities can be held personally liable, but these relate to a demonstrable failure in trustees carrying out their duties, such as knowingly ignoring fraud. Unincorporated groups cannot enter into contracts in their own right, and a trustee must enter the contract in their own name. This is normally limited to things such as setting up an insurance policy for the group or accepting a small grant. If an unincorporated charity was to enter into a contract to deliver a service and run out of funds and be unable to meet its liabilities, the trustees could be personally liable for these liabilities. Because of this, an unincorporated structure is most appropriate for groups with low incomes, no delivery contracts, and without employees or property. That way they keep the level of risk low. But to reassure you, by acting with care and skill you limit your liability. Hundreds of thousands of people have acted as trustees to charities for many decades without incident, and where something has gone wrong, the law generally seeks to protect individual trustees from personal risk where they have acted in good faith and complied with trustees' duties. And this is encapsulated in this quote from the Charity Commission. The Charity Commission recognises that most trustees are volunteers who sometimes make honest mistakes. Trustees are not expected to be perfect. They are expected to do their best to comply with their duties. Charity law generally protects trustees who have acted honestly and reasonably. The rest of this recording is going to be looking at the main duties. This infographic has been produced by the Charity Commission and summarises the 6 main duties. I'm going to be taking this apart and looking at each one. Duty number 1. Ensure your charity is carrying out its purposes for public benefit. It used to be that charitable purposes were limited to the advancement of education, prevention or relief of poverty and advancement of religion, but the 2011 Charity Act defined 11 additional charitable purposes, including the advancement of citizenship or community development, which includes promoting volunteering or the voluntary sector and community capacity building, and the advancement of environmental protection or improvement, which includes preservation and conservation of the natural environment and the promotion of sustainable development. Trustees are required to inform themselves about how their charity is fulfilling its purposes and benefiting the public, and what difference their charity is really making. Duty number 2. Complying with your governing document. All registered charities have a governing document that lays out the rules by which their charity must operate. And this might be called a constitution, or if the charity is also registered as a company, it may be called a Memorandum of Articles of Association. Unregistered charities, sometimes called charitable associations, should also have a constitution, and the Charity Commission have templates groups can use. The governing document lays out the charitable purposes the charity is set up to deliver, which, when written down, are called objects. It defines who the charity is set up to benefit and how, in very general terms, they'll achieve this. It sets up the parameters within which the charity must operate, and trustees are not permitted to use the charity's resources to do something outside these limits. You are not expected to be a legal expert, but you are expected to be acquainted with the governing document, to be curious, ask questions, so that you understand what's going on within the charity and point out any failure to keep to the rules. Duty number 3. Act in your charity's best interest. This is about making balanced, informed decisions and being prepared to question and challenge anything that concerns you or you don't understand. It's also about recognising and dealing with conflicts of interest. As a trustee, you must declare and address any conflicts of interest. This helps ensure public benefit stays at the centre of your decisions. Conflicts can be financial, for example. If a family member or close friend benefits from the services of the charity or are paid for goods or services, you would need to declare it. Or a conflict of loyalty if you're involved in more than one organisation, which is often the case. To avoid this, boards should maintain a register of interest, for example, listing their employer, clubs or societies they're members of, or other trustee roles they hold. Boards must identify and declare conflicts of interest at the start of each meeting. If there's a conflict, the person involved must absent themselves from any decision making related to the conflict, and this should be recorded in the minutes. Acting in your charity's best interest is not about preserving the charity for its own sake or serving personal interest. Ultimately, what's meant by best interest is about delivering your charity's mission. The mission is the why, who and what. So, for example, Oxfam's mission statement is a just world without poverty. In some circumstances, it could be that your mission will be best served by merging or being taken over by another charity. Duty number 4. Ensure your charity is accountable. This is about meeting your charity's legal accounting and reporting requirements as outlined by the regulator and in your governing document. Trustees might delegate authority to deal with finances to a treasurer, staff member or an external accountant, but as a board they remain ultimately responsible for checking legal accounting requirements are met and the correct reports are made. This doesn't mean you have to be a finance whiz, but it does mean you have to be prepared to ask questions to satisfy yourself that resources are correctly recorded, only spent on furthering the charity's purposes, and are protected by minimising the risk of theft, fraud or cybercrime by having good financial controls in place. Putting in place good financial controls isn't overly complicated, and your local CVS can help you develop a policy to cover this. Trustees should also be transparent in their actions, willing to explain their decisions to other interested parties, and demonstrate that no one is above scrutiny. To help them do this, they are able to spend funds, if they have them, on training and expert advice when needed. Duty number 5. Managing your charity's resources responsibly. This is about managing risks to assets and people. If a charity board has staff, it's an employer and has a duty of care as well as legal responsibilities towards them. It may also have assets such as a building or a vehicle and is responsible for ensuring that these are safe and yield the best return for the charity. The risk is managed through planning, for example by creating a risk register, but also by putting policies and procedures in place which will either help prevent problems arising in the first place or put in place a recognised roadmap to deal with them. Once again, you are not expected to know all the answers or be able to draft these policies, but you should be asking for support either from staff or organisations such as a local CVS. Key procedures include health and safety, which protects people from harm, ensuring risks are properly assessed and the right insurance is in place. Safeguarding, providing a safe and trusted environment for people, anyone who comes into contact with the charity, and this will include safe recruiting practices for staff and volunteers, making sure people have the right DBS checks if needed, for example. Equal opportunities, or increasingly this is expanded to equality, diversity and inclusion. This protects people with specific characteristics such as disability and race. And you will need to ensure that everyone in your organisation knows how to treat people appropriately and makes reasonable adjustments to remove both physical and psychological barriers to promote diversity and inclusion. Data protection is around ensuring data is kept legally and safely as per data protection legislation. And employment, if you're an employer, covers things like contracts, pensions and payroll. Duty number 6. Act with reasonable care and skill. This is a bit of a catch-all as it overlaps with many of the other duties, but it's about using your skills and experience to benefit the charity, which might involve leveraging your contacts and using your networks, preparing for meetings and getting the information you need, deciding when you don't have enough information to make a decision and seeking advice, and planning ahead, thinking about how the organisation will deliver its mission in the long term, how it'll have the resources needed, and how you can sustain your organisation. Not just about money, but also about other things such as experience and reputation. So, if I reassemble the jigsaw, I hope I've shown you how important and rewarding being a trustee is. Trustees are vital to charities and to all the people that rely on them. There is lots of advice and help available, so please take a look at the information you'll find alongside this video. We hope you found this recording helpful. Please check out our other recordings, and if you would like to contact us, please do so on info@supportcambridgeshire.org.uk.